Well, good morning, everybody. Thank you for tuning in today. Welcome to It's Time for More Injury Funding Podcast, the podcast for all who want to learn about legal funding and its significance in the personal injury, workers' compensation, products liability, medical malpractice, and all other types of law practice domains. I'm your host, Laura, founder and CEO of More Injury Funding, the legal funding counselors with passion for law, medicine, legal funding, and heart for all suffering individuals. More Injury Funding is a sponsor, member, associate, or business partner of this podcast, Academy of Trek Accident Attorneys, Sandy Springs Bar Association, Georgia Association of Paralegals, Atlanta Legal Aid Society, State Bar of Georgia, Georgia Hispanic Chamber of Commerce, and Georgia Trial Lawyers Association. In today's episode, I have a special guest, Attorney Kimberly Hall, founder and CEO of the K Hall Law Group based on Peachtree Road in Atlanta, Georgia. At the end of this episode, we'll have one fun pop-up question, so stay tuned in. And Kimberly, welcome to Time for More Injury Funding Podcast.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited.
Absolutely, same here. So you've been practicing personal injury for how many years?
So this year would be 14 years, but I got into personal injury before going to law school. So 16 years total I've been doing personal injury.
Great. And how this journey has been for you so far?
Wow, it's been a lot of ups and downs. I think anybody who sits here and be like, it's been all wonderful, it's not totally the truth. But it's been good. I mean, I've seen a lot of development, in the world of personal injury, because it is its own little world, right? Mm-hmm. So in the world of personal injury and seeing how it has developed and just seeing the direction that it has taken medically, even with funding, right? Litigation, just the nature that the cases are taking, especially now, we talked a little bit off air, but just Uber and Lyft have caused a whole new dynamic, right? So I have been very blessed and fortunate to be in the industry for the length that I've had, but also watched all of the developments unfold. So it's been good.
That's wonderful. Yeah. And Kimberly, you consider yourself to be old-fashioned when it comes to practicing personal injury as well as living your life overall. You also live your life by the principle, seek first to bless others before blessing yourself, as quoted by Joyce Meyer and also referenced in Proverbs 11:17. Can you elaborate on that?
So when it comes to being old-fashioned, I know that we live in a very I call it a microwave world, right? We want everything fast paced and done quickly. And a lot of people, unfortunately, are just like, hey, I got into an accident, I want to get paid. But for me, it is about your healing. It's about your recovery. It's about your state of mind. We get a lot of clients where it really affects their life, right? They lose jobs. I have a client right now. He's getting ready to get put out of his apartment. And he lost his job in December because they had essentially laid him off because he was missing so many doctor's appointments. Missing so many work, right? Missing so much work. So sure. I definitely just believe in being hands-on. I think we've gotten away from that, and we see that now with commercials and send me a you can text us in this, right? And don't get me wrong, we absolutely engage in that, right? You can text us and all of that, but it's important to pick the phone up. And that's one thing that I tell my team: don't get away from talking to the client. They are your best resource. Every single time, pick the client up, pick the phone up, call them, check on them, see how they're doing. You could call me right now about any client. I can tell you if they're married, if they have kids, where they work. All of that stuff is important to me, because other than that, you just become a paycheck. And so I've been working since I was 15. And so my parents instilled in me, you treat people how you want to be treated. You treat them if this was your mother or your father, your sister, your brother, what kind of service would you extend to them? And I text my parents, but I don't text my parents. I talk to them, I pick up the phone, I spend time, I communicate. When there are issues, we address them. We don't run away from them. We make a mistake, we apologize, we work to correct it. To me, that is old fashioned. And you can run as many commercials as you want, marketing, advertising. I believe the best referral is the one that somebody refers to you.
Absolutely.
That's important, right? I forgot what else you asked me. What else did you?
Yeah. So the question was about, helping others before you help yourself. That's a principle you live by.
I think we live in a society of, let me get mine first. Let me get it. I want this bag. I want this name. I want to be recognized here and all of that. But that is, for me, from a Christian perspective, that is not why we're placed here. We are placed here to be disciples of his kingdom, to help people. God's word says, what you've done to the least of these, you've done unto me. And so when it is my time, when God looks back, I want him to be pleased with my service and in the way that I treated his people. And so, even though we work in money, that's what personal injury is. There are times on cases, I don't take money. I'm not going to take, if you got $1,000 for your kid, I'm not about to take money from that. That's $1,000 you need for maybe tuition or clothes or whatever their financial needs may be. And I think that is just a simple way to bless somebody. And let's be clear, they don't always appreciate it, but it's not for them to appreciate, right? It's for me to know that I'm going over and beyond for this client, and that, my blessings and reward, not always financially, right? But my blessings and reward will come from God, whether that just being here with you today is a blessing, right?
Oh, that's so sweet.
Being able to meet you today, but blessings come, being able, my kids are safe. I'm in my right mind. I had clothes to put on. It's not always just financial. People smiling at you, somebody being kind, somebody going out their way for you. All of those things to me are equal blessings. And so I just believe you do right, and right will not believe, God's word says, right? You sow what you reap. So yes.
That's wonderful. Yeah. That's a beautiful principle to live by. And so today we'll dive deep specifically into the topic of the emotional impact of personal injury. Psychological effects that personal injuries often have on individuals and their families could vary from post-traumatic stress disorder, PTSD, to depression, to anxiety. How important is the support of mental health during the recovery process?
It is extremely important. I think people becoming, I find even now with insurance adjusters, it's like, it's not that big of a deal, right? We get into accidents all the time. So there becomes this level of being desensitized. But there is a reality for some people. The very first case I worked, and this is how I knew I wanted to go into personal injury. The very first case I worked, this lady lost her son. It was probably like a liability case, but she lost her son. The seatbelt essentially sliced his body in half. He was like 6 years old. It was 3 kids in the back. They were going school shopping. And this is years ago. It was like 2005, 6, so years ago. And so he dies, and her 2 children survive, but they have severe medical issues. She didn't drive for years, many years, right? And of course, it was a little more traumatic because it was death. But you have people who already have that fear before they get on the road. So when they get into an accident, I've had so many clients tell me, oh my gosh, I felt like my life was flashing before my eyes. And even people that are severely injured, they become mentally devastated simply because their car had flipped. Their car ran into a median, like people's lot, like it literally flashes before they think they are going to die. And so because we ride in cars every day, it is the only mode of transportation, right? Well, not the only mode, but it's the
main one,
right? The main mode of transportation. So how do you not get in a car again? And so, for me, it becomes a really big deal. So I stress heavily. And even though people suffer, and I'm sure you already know this, right? But even though people suffer a lot after accidents, they won't go and get any help. You have to stress to them, because then they feel like something's wrong with them. They feel like it's almost unnatural to feel this way, because they feel like they should be desensitized, right? Accidents happen every day. Why is it happening to me? And I've been doing personal injury as long as I have. I thank God I've never been in an accident, but
knock on wood here.
Right. Yes. Yeah. Like, it's just like, I don't want to ever be there either, because I know, and then I have children, and all of those kind of things. Like I bought the most expensive car seat you could buy for my children, because I'm just like, hey, well, not only expensive, but safe, right? Safe. I should say the most safe car seat I could buy for them, just because of the trauma that comes. And that's another thing with children. I don't know if it's on here, so if I jump in, but with children,
my 17 almost, so but I remember those days.
Accidents. I have had just about every child I've had in a car accident, they've had to have therapy because they're afraid. They've seen their mom or dad screaming in the front. It's been very traumatic for them. They've had broken bones. They've had cuts or gashes or whatever the case may be. They get very afraid to get back into the backseat of a car, right? And so it really affects people at a deeper level than I think the insurance company actually wants to acknowledge.
Okay. How does personal injury impact individuals' mental health and emotional well-being overall?
I think it affects them overall because if you now can't work and you're already paycheck to paycheck,
Mhm.
and now you're off and you don't have short-term disability, you're an hourly employee, that emotionally stresses people out,
Mhm.
right? And so I would love to be able to call their mortgage company and be like, hey, they can't make their mortgage this month because they couldn't work because of this accident.
Mhm.
It is a very stressful time and people have to continue to push through continuously. And I think that it has an emotional I mean, we get emotional if we can't pay a bill.
Of course, of
And we
course,
work every
absolutely.
day. So a person who can't work physically because of what has happened to them in an accident, it takes an emotional toll. It takes a mental toll. I see this more with my male clients than my female clients because they feel like they are bred to be a provider, right? Bred to be in control and to take over and make sure that their families are well. And so now when they're put in these places where their income is cut drastically, it does take a mental effect on them. I've had clients where both man and woman have become very mean. And I know it's out of a place of frustration and pain. It's frustration and pain. So it definitely has a dramatic effect for clients a lot. And sometimes people aren't what we call severely injured. So I mean people that are not surgical or something like that. But some of these people have severe strains. I had a client, their body was literally strained from their neck down to like the back of their legs. So every time they moved, they were in extreme pain. But it was just a severe strain because the car had flipped several times. And it's a lot, right? So though I believe all of those things combined or even individually can have a mental and emotional effect on a client past just the injury itself. Yeah.
And so you mentioned anger and physical pain. And so besides those, how does the traumatic stress disorder, PTSD, manifest in individuals who have been through a traumatic personal injury, be it a car accident, trekking accident, Uber, or Lyft ride share collision, or any other type of personal and bodily injury?
I think PTSD, based on let me first say I'm not certified and to be a psychologist at PTSD. So this is just based on my experience. So no disrespect to any psychotherapists or psychologists or psychiatrists that are listening. But based on my experience and knowledge of dealing with clients with PTSD, it manifests in different ways, right? So we can just think about PTSD in a sense of, hey, they're afraid to get in a car, which can cause problems because you got to get to the doctor. So the only way to get there is via transportation.
Yes.
And so when you have clients who are hesitant to get in a car, so then they start missing treatment. They don't go, they don't show up, and then they won't say that that's what it is. I recently had a client that started having severe panic attacks about it. And I don't think it took us a minute. I understood what it was, but it took me a minute to get him to understand what was going on with him. It was, again, a very traumatic experience for him. And so PTSD starts manifesting even in depression. People don't get up, they can lay around for hours. And I think the PTSD can also mentally make people be in more pain than they are. Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
So because they're so triggered and so sad and so depressed, it's like I can't get up. And so that essentially causes the body to hurt more because they're not stretching, they're not doing the things that they need to do. And then PTSD causes them not to interact with their families. It causes them they just kind of become disengaged.
Yes.
And sometimes by the time a client gets to me, they may have been involved in 2 accidents that I didn't represent them for. And they are mad by the time, every time we're talking, they're yelling on the phone. And I take it and I just say, I understand and I get it. Let's talk it through. Let's walk it through, because they haven't dealt with the trauma, the frustration, the fear, the anxiety that they had from the first 1 or 2 accidents that they had before coming to me. So I think PTSD can manifest in multiple ways within the case, at home, on their job, or even later on down the road.
And how can a personal injury not only affect the injured individual, but also their immediate family, loved ones, colleagues, and even the community? Doesn't it have a ripple effect on everyone surrounding that injured individual?
It does. I think directly, if you're married, it affects the spouse just because one person is, I won't say incapacitated, but they aren't at their normal functioning level. So if you are dependent, I had a case recently where all the man did was work, right? And if this is your role in your household, I am not judging. This is just facts of this particular case. So the man worked all the time. That's what he did. The wife did everything else with the child, with their children, and they had one child that was autistic. So when she got hurt, she literally couldn't do anything. She could not get out of the bed. She had a severe concussion. She couldn't move. She couldn't, the light, like nothing she could do. And it disrupted their household. He didn't cook. He didn't pick the kids up from school. He didn't take them to extracurriculars. He didn't take them to school. He wasn't involved in the child's IEP plan. Like, it was a big deal. And so when we talk about an accident, people just think they see accidents on the road all the time, but it literally affected their household. Every time you talk to this mother, she was crying because she could not step up and do what she normally does in her role, right? And so, and then we also, because we lost a consortium is a big deal. I bring it every chance I get. For my married people, like, you know, you have the right to have sex in your marriage, right? And outside of sex, just like the daily things that you do within your household, right? So it's the loss of the services. I hate to put it that way, just legal word, right? The loss of services of that spouse. And so all of that happened in this particular case, right? So he was mad. He's like, I can't have sex with my wife. Listen, I got it, no judgment. Let me present this to the insurance company. And she, even as a wife, felt bad that she was not able to please her husband either in that way, right? So these things affect the spouse directly. Now you have children involved because now they're used to mom doing something that she now can't do, and dad's trying to figure it out. So now you have children that are affected. Sometimes you have, I've had cases where the child, so they're an adult, right? But they are the child that takes care of a parent. And so now that is affected because they can't do what they normally do for their, you know, for their elderly parent or just a parent that's disabled. So it can have a resounding effect when we talk about their work, right? Now they can't go to work. I had a client, he worked on tractor trailers, ironically was hit by a tractor trailer. And that's what he did. And so he, you know, he ultimately got fired. That's a whole different story. But, you know, he ended up losing his job and he loved his job, right? And he said he would go into work and these people were like, you're not doing your job. You're not doing what you're supposed to do. And he's like, what am I supposed to do? Like, I got into an accident and these people don't understand it. I think it can also create conflict within the workplace. And then again, just circling back to your emotional stress and mental stress about this is a job you love that you're attempting to still go to, that you're attempting to still show up. And then the people there don't even appreciate that I'm coming in here and working through my pain, that I could be at home, but I'm still coming in here and showing up. So I think all of those things, again, individually or collectively, can all affect the well-being of a person and how that one accident where somebody was following too closely on their phone, not paying attention, whatever it may be, driving drunk, crossing the road, you turning improperly, whatever, right, can cause all of these lingering effects for somebody.
And so based on your almost 15 years of experience in personal injury, what are some common signs and symptoms of depression that individuals may experience after personal injury? Again, based on your experience and practice.
Ooh, the first one is attitudes. Frustration, yelling at you all the time. That to me, that's always the first thing, especially when you meet them in a consult and they're very kind. And then the minute things start transpiring on the case, now they're upset, it makes them mad, they're frustrated, all of those things. I think that's a sign of depression. Not showing up to doctor's appointments, not wanting to be engaged in the process, I think sometimes can be a sign of depression because they're hurt and they will explain to you that they're hurt. And if they go to a doctor's appointment, you'll have some findings that definitely show that they're hurt, but they don't follow through and follow up with what they need to be doing. So that, to me, that can be a sign of depression as well. If I talk to a family member, which sometimes I try to do if I'm not getting the response I want from them in terms of answering calls or whatever. And sometimes it's just that they're working, right? It's just not always the sign of it, but it can be an indicator. So I may talk to a family member in the house, like, what's going on with them, and they might start telling me about mood swings and things of that nature. So again, we'll talk about that. And then I think sometimes, because when you service a client, it's not the only time you get them, unfortunately. So you might get them again, and then they may even circle back and tell you, like, that last case, like, I realize now I was depressed, right? And so because you only interact with these clients on a limited basis in terms of just talking to them on the phone and not, seeing them in person, or even being a part of their daily life, you just have to look for those smaller signs. Like, why is this client always upset when they call? Now, some of them just got attitude problems, right?
Sure. Yeah, that happens too.
But some of them, if you really just look past them, and if you look at their families and start to get to know them a little better, then you just realize that they are struggling with depression. But you have to be careful how you address that, because people don't want to be depressed. They don't want to be sick. They see that as a negative thing. So you have to be very gentle with them, very kind and very patient with them. And to me, very loving. That's why I said early on in the podcast, you just can't treat them as a chick, because it really does affect a lot of people.
Absolutely. Yeah. So we touched a little bit on depression, but how does anxiety manifest in individuals who are experiencing or have experienced a personal injury? And what are some coping mechanisms for managing anxiety during the recovery process that you recommend or have ever recommended to your clients?
I have actually never recommended any outside of therapy for anxiety. Anxiety, it manifests in ways where I think a lot of times you already know that your client has anxiety. I experience anxiety the most with them not wanting to get behind the wheel of a car again, or telling me, like, oh, when somebody else is driving, all they can think about is that accident again. I also have experienced anxiety with clients because now somebody else tells me, oh, they're drinking a little bit more, they're smoking weed a little bit more than they already do, or something like that. I also get anxiety a lot when it comes to MRIs.
Oh, interesting. Right. So claustrophobic of the space.
Exactly. And so for that, of course, the doctors internally will give them Valium to, bring down their anxiety. But yeah, I get that injections.
Injections.
Anxiety through the
roof. Goodness, yes.
Inject me, take the pain away. Like, I'm not scared. But I understand why people have different fears and things of that nature. So I will say, for me, although I've never been in an accident, I've had an MRI, had injections. I've had, my husband and my mother have also been through surgeries, again, not related to an auto accident.
So Kimberly, we touched a little bit on depression, but tell me now, how does anxiety manifest in individuals who have experienced or are experiencing a personal injury? And what are some coping mechanisms for managing anxiety during the recovery process in your experience?
So I think the main way to deal with anxiety after an auto accident is really therapy. Because they have, your counselors, your therapists, psychotherapists, psychologists, psychiatrists, all of those people, they have the tools that you need to work through how you're feeling after an accident, right? However, I do have clients who have anxiety just about the process itself, because you're not able to answer all their questions. They're very much like me. They're organized, plan. I need to know what's next. What do we do? How long is it going to take? So those people, you really just have to continue to work with them. You just have to answer all their questions. You just have to be available to them. And you just have to be patient and kind with them, right? Because they don't know. You know it as the lawyer. You know it as the paralegal. You know it as the assistant, but they don't. And so you want to be patient and explain the process to them. And then I also feel when you do that, they feel more comfortable, like, okay, this person isn't getting over on me, like they're explaining things to me. So I think that that's important. The other issue that I find, or I won't say issue, but when anxiety arises, is with injections and MRIs. And so me personally, I've had both of them, not related to an auto accident, but I've had them. I think what happens is that there's a different trust with the doctor than there is with the lawyer. And so being able to say, hey, I've been in an MRI machine. This is what you can expect. I tell them what I did, which was go to sleep, whatever the case may be. But doctors' offices do offer, medication for them to help them, because some clients are just claustrophobic. Sure. So it doesn't matter. They need
medication or not, right? They need
that medication, right? They need that medication. And then people just have a fear of needles, having those injections. Again, I tell them what I do. From a very little girl, when my doctor, as a pediatrician, he always say, my husband laughs at me now. He used to say peanut butter and jelly. When he was putting that needle in, to this day, that's what I still do. And I don't have any pain when I go get a shot.
Peanut butter jelly time.
That's it. So it has worked for me. And so people giggle, but I tell them, listen, just because it's really just taking your mind off what's happening. Right? So, of course, I've had 2 babies, so epidural injections, and those needles are humongous. Yeah. But also have an injection in the hip. I've had several over the years. So, I just try to walk them through and kind of tell them what to expect. And I think for most of the clients, it does ease their anxiety. Yeah.
And what do you think what role does mental health support play in the overall recovery process for individuals who have sustained a personal bodily injury?
I think that mental health, in general, because a lot of times when you have people come to you, they may already be behind on their rent or their bills, or already having financial issues, or their car already doesn't work, or their car's already on its last leg, or, all these things. So you have so many other issues coming into play before you get the client, right? So I think in terms of mental health, although I don't do an analysis on the client, like, hey, what's your mental health status? I really try to listen to the client, right? Because I think that will tell you a lot. And we talked, early in the podcast about being old-fashioned. I think that's why it's important to talk to people. If you sit and talk to them and get an understanding of where they're coming from, and what their frustration may be, because all of that contributes to mental health, what they're going through, what they've been through, what they're trying to overcome currently, whatever, all of those things, right? So I believe all of that plays into the mental health. And so for me, I think the best remedy is just trying to get to know the client. Now, you can absolutely, if you see something past that, depression or whatever, because sometimes clients are sick, they've already been through a lot, whatever it may be, you can definitely recommend, like, hey, I think maybe you should talk to somebody. I have a client right now, she hasn't worked in 2 years because of her injury. So I won't say isolated, because she can leave her house, but she hasn't worked in 2 years. You worked all of your life, and now your life is only consumed with doctor's appointments. That does something to you. Absolutely. It really does. It does something to you. And so all I can do is encourage to get the help. It hasn't been done, but all I can do is continue to encourage, continue to walk with her through the process. Again, explain to her, like, hey, if you were back at work, if you were back connected to your community, if you were back, and I hate to say, let me say, work gives us a sense of purpose. Absolutely. Whether you're volunteering, whatever it may be, just giving hours at your children's school, it gives us a sense of purpose. So when you have people and their life is only consumed with doctor's appointments, what's their purpose? And when you don't have purpose, then you find like you don't have anything to live for. And then the depression rolls in, the anxiety rolls in. So I think in responding to the question, I guess just generally, purpose is important when it comes to mental health, and getting people to see that you're still important, that this accident doesn't define you. This accident, it may change some things about you physically, but you're still important. You're still loved. Your family still needs you. Your community still needs you. And just letting them know that we're here for you every step of the way. So, well, I might have to change my title. Right now I say, remember, you're the best part of what you do. I might need to change it to say, hey, listen, we're with you every step of the way. I love it. That's it. So that all of those things, are definitely important, and they play into, just mental health in general.
Do you ever recommend any specific therapies or treatment modalities to your clients that you believe are particularly effective in addressing the emotional impact of a personal injury?
So again, I would just recommend therapy. And of course, if they have insurance, we, give them the resources to be able to get that done. If they don't have insurance, then we help them walk through that process too. But in terms of, I think some of it too is, are you doing the work at home? Because that's important. So I really try to stress to them, do the work at home. And so even for me, and I tell that to them, I was like, hey, listen, I'm telling you that, but I'm telling it to myself. I'm a big gym rat or whatever, but I don't stretch. And that's important to working out, right? You got to stretch. I don't care how much working out you do and saunas and all that stuff, you still have to stretch. It's a recovery for your body. And so it's the same thing in the accident. You can show up to the doctor's appointments and that's all well and good, but they give you things to do at home and things to do differently and things to pay attention to. And so if you are not doing those things, it can delay your recovery, which then leads to more frustration because then you're like, I'm still going to therapy. I've been in therapy 6 weeks, but it may have been 4 weeks if you were doing the stuff you're supposed to do at home. So for me, those are the things that I work to recommend to my clients to help them during that process.
That's wonderful. How can healthcare providers and legal professionals like yourself work together to ensure that individuals receive the necessary mental health support during their recovery journey?
Or you're going to get me in trouble.
Try not to.
Stop seeing the client as a check. That to me, that's what it boils down to. When this person walks into your office, doctors, and they're telling you what's wrong with them, instead of you thinking they're lying, they're not being truthful, they're being dramatic, listen to them. Or when you're blocking clients out, and let me say first, I try not to work with these particular providers, where I won't call any names. So there are providers I try not to work with, absolutely. But when you have a client come in and you're talking to them for 6 minutes, or you send your PA in first to talk to them, or the nurse to talk to them, ask them 22 questions that you're not even reading, right? You're coming in, you're just running through the medical jargon that you run through. They don't feel heard. They don't feel like you're going to take care of them. It plays with their mind because then they're like, well, what am I doing wrong? Right? So to me, personal injury has become such a money game, and I get it, right? This to my lawyers and my doctors, I get it. I work in the industry, I got it. But we can't detach the person from the case. Like they are the case. Or as a medical provider, you just send somebody out to 10 different providers, right? It's a lot. It's very I like to go to the dentist. You know?
Who does? Sorry, Dr. Albert.
Sending these people to 4 or 5 different locations, just running up bills on a case. It's frustrating, right? And as the lawyer, I think lawyers who don't speak up, lawyers who don't have communication with their doctors, lawyers who are money bagging with the doctors behind the scenes or whatever is the other stuff that's going on just to get the money. To me, all of those things are problematic. And to me, it continues to play in. And I think there are a lot of good lawyers out here. I'm not saying that, right? I think there are a lot of good lawyers. I think there are a lot of good lawyers that care, that respect the world of personal injury, that respect the clients, that respect the doctors. But when we don't work collectively, or when I call you as a lawyer about an issue on my case and you dismiss me, that's problematic. If I'm calling you to talk to you about some of my concerns with my client and you dismiss me, that's problematic. Because we're supposed to be working to help the client, not just to get paid. The money gonna come. That's why we're working. But what kind of experience are they gonna have with us before they get their money? So to me, I think all of those things play in. And then I think it can create an issue because as a lawyer, if you don't agree with the doctor, you have to be very gentle in how you explain that to a client. And now the client either looking at you or looking at the doctor crazy because it's like, well, who do I believe in this situation? Well, they're the doctor, you're just a lawyer, or, whatever the case may be. So to me, I find like that can be the biggest hindrance to any case in terms of the mental health of a client, because that stuff matters. Like, and I think that's what we get away from in the industry, just thinking, oh, it's just an auto accident. It's just a couple of injuries. Like, no, all that stuff plays into mental health. When I'm going to 15 doctor's appointments this month, that's taxing.
It's terrible.
Yeah.
How can individuals advocate for their mental health needs when navigating the legal and insurance processes related to a personal injury claim? What's your experience with that?
How can they advocate? It's a good question. I think to advocate for yourself, you got to speak up.
Mm-hmm.
You got to say, I'm not okay. And you have to be okay with saying that you're not okay. And so for me, I'm a lawyer that talks to all of my clients, but for firms that don't work that way, they have to advocate for the people they're talking to, the personal, the paralegal, the assistant, whatever their title is, the people that you're talking to, the intake search, whoever, to advocate, to say, hey, like, this is past bodily injury for me. And I think too, as the lawyer, you have to advocate too. I've been in situations, I will call a doctor and be like, hey, I don't think this person's okay. Mm-hmm. Hey, this person has been doing XYZ. Like when they get in there with you, try to talk to them too. Right? Because they think they're just trusting me to handle their case. Mm-hmm. But you are essentially trusting me with everything that's attached to this case, not just the money. Mm-hmm. And so I think we have to be vigilant as attorneys too, when our clients come to us, right? And this isn't, of course, we're not talking about on every single case, right? Your fender bender, that's $500 right. and 6 chiro appointments. You're probably all right. You know what I'm saying? Right. But that, if you had 2 more accidents after that, you know what I'm saying?
Oh,
now
yes.
we might be in a mental health kind of conversation. So again, just being in a place that if you are the client and listening to this podcast, just being in a place to speak up for yourself and don't think that you're wasting an attorney's time. And if you feel that way, call me. Get a different attorney.
We'll get that part soon. Kimberly Hall for everybody.
But let me add to that though. To advocate for yourself, you don't have to continue to go to a doctor you don't trust. Mm-hmm. You don't have to stay with an attorney you don't trust. That's also advocating for yourself. Mm-hmm. You understand? Mm-hmm.
Oh, yes.
And I think people feel stuck. And we probably make them feel stuck, right? Or they're just not educated. They just don't know. And you don't know what you don't know. But again, if you don't speak up and you don't ask questions, then how you gonna advocate? And I have clients all the time, they call me after doctor's phone. I'm like, you're sitting in the doctor's appointment. You ask the questions while you're in there, right? And so I know they'd be like, I know. I'll be like, but listen, you have to advocate for yourself. That's important. So yeah, sorry, that's my little soap opera.
I love it. Love it. So self-care plays a huge role when it comes to managing the emotional impact of personal injury. What are some practical self-care strategies for individuals to implement that you usually recommend to your injured and suffering clients?
Self-care. For the client, not for myself, for the client.
Well, okay. you can answer for both. Because it does affect you too, but today we're kind of focusing on clients.
So self-care for a lot of times you get clients who just refuse to take off work. Mm-hmm. They will not take off work. Now, and I am talking about clients who can afford to take off work, who have a short-term disability. This isn't going to call up financial uproar. To me, that is important because after the accident, bodies need rest. It's a very traumatic experience. I just kind of explained to the client, like, hey, if you go to Six Flags all day, you're fine while you're there. But the minute you get home and sit down, your body is literally aching from head to toe. It is doing something that it doesn't do on a regular basis. So it's the same thing. Okay, let me not say same thing for the doctors. Like, it's not the same thing. It is a similar or a good analogy to the fact of now your body is doing something it's never done before, right? It's injured in a way that it isn't injured before. And so you have to sit down, take a break, relax, and let your body rest. Now, I understand for a lot of clients, they just can't do that, financially or whatever. Or you have clients that have small children at home. Had a client, she just had a baby 2 weeks when she got into an accident. So those things can make it difficult, but I believe you can self-care to the point that you can, right? Take your medicine if you're okay with taking medicine. Rest and relax after work and try to sit down if that's something that you can do. If you can take a few PTO days or you got vacation time and can do that, then absolutely do that. So self-care for every client is going to look different, but those are definitely some things that I would suggest.
Okay, that's wonderful. Now, Thank you so much again for talking to me today.
Absolutely.
We kind of get into the end of it, but before I let you go, I have that one fun pop-up question. You ready, Kimberly?
Oh, I'm ready.
Just say yes. What do people misunderstand about you the most?
Misunderstand. Listen, I might have to come back and answer that. What do people misunderstand
Yes,
about me?
what do you know about yourself that others get wrong impression of you? All of us, think one way of ourselves, and some others may see us in totally different light. And you get these compliments or maybe negative comments about you, and they're like, I never thought about that about myself. So what do you think people misunderstand about you most of the time, since you maybe in your childhood, maybe currently, and usually that kind of follows throughout the whole life?
I think that sometimes just being associated like attorney, that people think you're somebody that you're not. I'm very loving, I'm very kind, I'm very approachable, but I'm very honest. And I think sometimes people take me being honest as being mean or rude. And I do it with love. I do it with the utmost respect, but I'm gonna be honest. And I think sometimes that can be taken the wrong way. So I think that's probably maybe the biggest misconception about me. What's that? I'll use big shot, maybe.
Okay.
Oh, she's such a big shot. And I'm like, listen, I get up and work every day. I take my kids to school. I do not have like, I don't have none of that. Like
you do it yourself. All of it.
Yeah. You said, hey, you seem old fashioned and down to earth, and that is me, right? And don't get me wrong, I need help. My daddy helped me out with my kids and stuff, and so I'm not saying that, right? But I am very hands-on, with my children, very hands-on with my family. Very much. I like to get up at 5 o'clock. I don't like working late at night. Those kind of things. So I think that's probably the biggest misconception. Just big shot. But that's not true.
I love it. Again, that was Attorney Kimberly Hall with the K Hall Law Group in Atlanta, Georgia. And thank you so much again, Kimberly, about talking, spending time with me and teaching me and our listeners and viewers about the emotional impact of personal injury on the injured and their families. Now, if anybody needs your help or is looking for your firm, is looking, if somebody has been injured in a car accident, trekking accident, Uber, Lyft, or any type of personal injury, how can they find you? Do you have a website, social media resources?
I do. We also do motorcycle and pedestrian accidents.
Good to know. Okay.
So you can find me at TheKHLG.com. That is our website. 678-367-3339 is our telephone number. It is a call and text line, so we are available to you. We have 24-hour service, so anytime that something happens, somebody will be there to answer your call. It won't be me, because I just told you I don't work. And would you ask me platform? So you can find me on Facebook just under my name, which is Kimberly B Hall. If you want to get to know me a little bit more personal, you can find my page there. But our business site is K Hall Law Group, or KB Hall ESQ, so which would be my initials, ESQ for Esquire, which is lawyer. So those are the different platforms that you can find me on. I don't Twitter, and I'm on LinkedIn under my regular name, and it's too much.
It's too many.
I can't keep up. Like, listen, you're gonna find me on those three. Yeah, I'll answer you on one of those.
Yeah, so I think that's sufficient. Thank you again, Kimberly, so much. And I want to thank you all for listening and watching our episode today. For more tips and tricks on legal funding and personal injury related topics, follow me, download, like, and subscribe for It's Time for More Injury Funding podcast on several podcast platforms worldwide, including Spotify, Amazon Music, Apple Podcasts, iHeart, and all other platforms worldwide. And follow me on follow on my website at More Injury Funding at moreinjuryfunding.com. on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, TikTok, Twitter, YouTube, Yelp, Google Business Profile. I think I mentioned them all, and I can't wait to see and listen to you all again at my next upcoming episode. Until then, be well. Thank you so much, Kimberly.
Bye, guys. Thank you.
Bye.